We don't want you in our woods. We don't want you here. This is our woods. Hey y'all, welcome back to Harmon Homestead. We're doing another Are You Prepared video today. Guys, let me start out by saying this. Thank you to everyone that has supported these videos. They have taken off much more than I have expected. And I've really just talked about minor topics like flashlights, winter prep for the homestead, things like that. But there's one thing that I've always wanted to talk about and learn about myself, and that's what we're going to do today. EMPs, electromagnetic pulses. Now, guys, this is not something that I'm familiar with. I had to research this on my own. I am going to put it in layman terms and just hit the highlights on this subject, okay? So this is more of a catastrophic event instead of just things to prepare around for the home, but there's a lot of similarities in just small events and large events that you need to prepare for. So what I've done is I've put a link to an article that I have used to get familiar with this in the description of the video. I'm going to refer to that article and talk about most of what it's saying. So if you're not familiar with an EMP, which a lot of you are, because a lot of preppers and homesteaders talk about EMPs, but no one really breaks it down into what it will be. An EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, in layman terms, it can be natural or man-made, one of the two. And what it will do, layman terms, is take out power, okay? All power is non-existent, and it can either be localized or it can be widespread, depending on the situation. And you think of, well, we'll just prepare for a power outage, but it goes so much deeper than that because it interferes with all electronics. That's the problem. And if you think about how many electronics we use today, from vehicles to water treatment plants to whatever, this is very, very in depth, okay? So I've kind of broken down things here in subjects that I want to talk about. Number one, communication. Again, electronics, cell phones. When this hits, if it ever does, who knows, it may never hit, but it's something you need to be prepared for, I think. We are preparing for it as we speak. Cell phones are gone. And I refer to this over and over and over, Hurricane Zeta that we lived through. Guys, when it hit here in our location, it was worse than anybody ever expected. It was sudden. It was worse. No one knew what happened because the power went out, the winds picked up, and cell phones went down. It took out our cell towers here, so there was no communication. Until you live in a situation like that where communication is completely taken from you and you were not expecting it, guys, you don't even understand how that would be until you live through it. And it's terrible because no one could get in touch with the other person. The day after the hurricane, my parents had drove down here to see me. I was trying to drive up there to see them. We didn't know what happened. We didn't know if anybody even existed, if there was mass house damage. We didn't know. So we were trying to get on the road, which was probably not the smartest thing to do in hindsight, okay? So when communication is taken from you, you probably don't need to get on the road, and I'm going to tell you why. Just for simple causes, okay? Simple causes. Trees were down all over the roads, okay? This probably wouldn't happen with an EMP. However, my parents tried to get to me, and I was trying to get to them. They got here. I was not here. So do you see the problem? But we couldn't communicate and let each other know that each other was trying to get to the other one. I should have just stayed in place. They probably should have stayed in place. Everybody should have just stayed where they were. Everything was stable, structurally stable as far as our houses, but the land around it there was catastrophic damage. There were pine trees the width of 3 of me laid over in our yard and missed the roof by about a foot when it fell. So, I mean, it was terrible. So the cell towers were out, and also if anything happens to a cell phone, let me tell you from personal experience, if the tower is disrupted, guys, it was weeks before we got cell phone coverage back in this area, and it was never right until about 2 months ago. I actually had to call the main company, and I said, look, ever since y'all have restored these towers, the communication is not right. The calls will drop. It's terrible. They had to come back out and I had to call corporate, and they had to send another company back out here to fix these cell phone towers because they never were right after they got fixed. So don't expect communication to be restored and be perfect afterwards. It was so aggravating. You would be talking to somebody and midstream, cut off. The towers were disrupted, and to find out something had happened to the tower after they repaired it again. So when communication is suddenly taken from you, you're in a totally different ballpark. There is mass panic, chaos, hysteria. Now, the actual cell phones, I don't know with an EMP if they will be destroyed. People talk about getting things called Faraday cages and Faraday bags. These things, apparently, in layman terms, guys, help protect your electronics. You're assuming that power will be restored or cell phone service will be restored. Don't know, okay? So that's the whole point of that, but communication will be down for a while. I know just simple structural things with a tower that's taken out took a long time to get it back. So I can imagine if the whole electronic system was destroyed, okay? And that's pretty much what this is with an EMP, is your electronics, anything electrical is taken out. So my recommendation would be stay put if you're in a safe place, but you're going to have chaos, okay? Chaos with that. Currency. Most people today use a debit card. They use a credit card. I don't even know about this crypto stuff, but they get into all of this electronic, digital currency, cash. We always keep cash on hand. If something like this happens, none of this digital stuff will work from what I understand. So if you go out to the store and you want to swipe your debit card to get a loaf of bread after something like this happens, you can't. Their electronic system's not going to work. Your money's not going to transfer. All this will be shut down, okay? It will be gone. Anything electric or digital is gone. Maybe days, maybe weeks, months, year, okay? We don't know. This has never happened to us specifically. If you're dependent on a check, you're probably not going to get that check. If it's a government check, anything like that, I don't know if they would even be able to mail that to you, because here's the next thing, transportation, okay? Guys, they say if you have a car past 1970 with all these electric systems in the cars, it will stop those. It will damage those or halt those. They may re-crank in 5 minutes, who knows? But this is the next thing. Gas pumps are not going to work. All this electric stuff, gas stations won't even be open. So gas is going to be your main thing. Probably not damage to the car. It's going to be lack of gas. So how are you going to transport goods? How are you going to transport yourself? How is any of this going to happen if your vehicle runs, okay? If your vehicle runs after this, how are you going to get gas? Have you prepared for stuff like that? Guys, this is something serious to think about. And not just cars, but you got to think about airplanes, trains, subways, whatever. Everything with an electric system in it can be halted because of this. Now, a lot of articles say they'll just glide to a stop. You think about how many wrecks will happen with that. But just the simple fact of you're not mobile. You can't move from spot A to B. And goods will not come in. Secondly, guys, if you think about just everything that we use today that uses electricity, that will be shut down. Stores to buy stuff. Stores are not going to stay open if the electricity goes out. It just will not happen. Everything refrigerated will be gone. Some places may have generators. That's fine, but they're going to run out of gas. That's the whole point here is the gas. You're not going to be able to get it to run this stuff. So, especially companies. So, you're not going to be able to go buy anything depending on your currency or the store being open. And guys, your home, that's the next thing. Home security. When Zeta hit our location, people were without power. We were without it 8 days. When the power finally came back on, thankfully, we have old appliances in this house. You've seen my stove and all that in previous videos cooking. When they cut the power on, our stuff was fine, but many people that we knew had everything fried because everything surged and come back on at once. They had to go buy new stoves, refrigerators, ovens. It was rough. Computers, people had those still plugged into the wall and didn't think about unplugging them. Stuff like that, their electronics were fried when the power just come back on. So could you imagine if this thing happened, this EMP? The first thing you need to do, I think, is a great thing. If you're at home, something like this happens, you need to make sure nothing's on fire in your house if something surges and destroys all this electronic stuff or halts it, whatever it may be, whether it's temporary or permanent. That's a great thing to think of, because a lot of people didn't think when the power come back on that everything they had in their house would be fried. It was mainly this newer stuff that they had. New stoves, a refrigerator you talk to and all that. I mean, all this new stuff just couldn't handle it when the power come back on. So that's just the people that I witnessed. Now, there may be other things, might be a 1970 stove that blew out. I don't know, but it seemed like all the newer stuff is what was gone. Food. So we've already said you won't be able to buy food, okay? You're not going to have currency. The store won't be open more than likely. Do you have food on hand? That's the main thing. But it's going to run out at some point, depending how long this would go, okay? Food. Your refrigeration will be out. This is just like a power outage, okay? It's not going to, you need to be grilling, getting rid of this food. It's going to pile up quick. And guys, also, this is a huge thing. So they say water will stop because all the electric pumps to pump water to you will not work at these water treatment plants. It won't be filtered and it won't be pumped, okay? That's the main thing, water. Now, we do not stock up on water, but we are going to change that because we live by a running source of water. But even if it come to that, I've never thought, we have more problems with flooding than we do, or near us, the areas. We're on a high up on a hill. But the land around us will flood because there's so much water. It's a huge creek beside us. It's always a running source of water, which is great. So we don't think about needing water, but have you ever even thought, how long does it take to boil water? Will that sanitize it fully? There's going to be, you're not even going to be able to flush a toilet. If you do bring water to your toilet, guys, that would be a hassle if something like this happened, because no water would be filling the toilet back up unless you manually went and got water to fill it up. Do you have a source to go do that? I wouldn't be using my clean drinking water to be doing that. So sanitation comes into play. But the main thing is, do you have drinking water? We're going to change that because we've just never thought of that, but that is something to change. And guys, honestly, the main thing to me is, how will you know that this is an EMP? How will you know? If you're at home, the power goes out, you say you call your husband or wife, the phone won't go through. That right there ought to be a pretty good sign, okay? If there's no weather disaster and the power and the cell phones are not working, okay? TV, any kind of satellite, anything like that does not work, okay? That ought to be a good sign, but otherwise, how would you know? The people on the road will know, apparently, from what they say about the cars, but how would you know it? Like, our power goes out all the time. I wouldn't think anything about it being an EMP, because what they say is the water will run for a certain amount of time, then it will shut off. What's already in the pipes coming, towards the houses will run, then it will cut off. So you may know several hours into this, get a good inkling, but I don't see how anybody would even know, because you won't have any, again, communication. There won't be any news to turn on. There won't be any phone to get an alert or an update. How would you know? I guess maybe if you tried to call the power company to get your power restored and then the phone call didn't go through. I don't know. There would only be certain signs to look for. Otherwise, it just looks like another day without power, but then you start noticing everything is disconnected and you start noticing the water, okay? So basic stuff, and guys, this may never happen. Who knows? It may never happen. It may happen tomorrow. Who knows? But it's good to be prepared for it, because it opened my eyes to at least having water. I know every prepper says to keep water. I just never really thought that it was that important for us, because we live by a constant running source of water. So, but it's a good thing to have. So I encourage you to do that. All right, guys, what have we learned from this? Basic. We think everything is permanent, but really all this stuff is temporary. From electronics to currency to power to whatever, you're going to have to, in this situation, you're going to have to put your mind in a 1700 mindset. You're going, like colonial times, you're going to have to think, well, This is lifestyle, and it's going to change in an instant. From what I understand about this, there are no vehicles. There are no modern technology conveniences. There's nothing. There is nothing, at least for a couple hours, couple days, weeks, months, or a year, okay? Or years. So you're going to have to put your mind in a primitive mindset, and that's how you're going to have to live. So I definitely would say lights, you need manual stuff, guys. I always say this because this cannot be destroyed except physically, okay? Matches, candles, oil lanterns, stuff like that, batteries, flashlights, food, a large supply. Guys, we have a huge supply of food here. It's because I preserve everything we grow, okay? I don't want to have to pay for groceries. That's the main thing, and that's the whole point. It tastes better if I grow it here. It's on hand. I'm doing something with my hobby. I'm providing for our family. That's why I put food on the shelf. But it's useful for cases like this, okay? A large supply of food. Water, we've talked about that. We're going to work on that. And then protection of self and home. Anytime that there's some kind of catastrophe, you know that this comes into play. You need to be able to protect yourself, your home, your land. Guys, we live out in the country. I've told you this. And I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, what would you do if an EMP happened? And he said, well, I'll just be coming towards you. I'll be coming towards the woods. Well, guys, I think a lot of people will probably think of that mentality. I don't know how far they would get on foot traveling, depending on how long this lasted. But guys, we don't want you in our woods. We don't want you here. This is our woods, okay? That's why we've got land. So, you know, we don't want you coming here. And I don't think, I'm telling you, if I have my house right now with woods all around it, a lot of people say, well, we just go out in the woods and live. Guys, I wouldn't want to go out in these woods and live. I know what's here. And this is in Alabama. I can't imagine somewhere out west where they really do have big game. There's timber rattlers. There's moccasins. There's coyotes that are in the yard. I'm just thinking of stuff that may be harmful to you as far as wildlife. Bears. There's bears around here. I've told you we live on the very tip of the Appalachian Mountains. There are black bears in this area. I wouldn't be so gung-ho to go out in these woods. Not unless I just had to. I would stay in my shelter, okay? As long as I could. I would just use the woods to work for me as far as timber to burn, fires to cook food. We've talked about that. Open fire cooking. I would use, there's so many resources. Running water, the land, plant. I've told you seed save. You could go out there and literally turn your raised bed with a shovel and plant if you can seed save. If this is for months on end, you can grow your own food. You can. You may have to get creative on ways to preserve it. That's something else. Just say you have to go out and hunt to get meat for this. How are you going to preserve it? Do you have a smokehouse? Do you have things like that? This could go in depth, very in depth, depending on how long this lasted, okay? If this lasted 2 weeks, you're probably not going to be doing that. I know we wouldn't. We have enough food set back. But if this was on for a year, yeah, we would have to be doing stuff like that. But we have so many natural resources here on our land. Guys, land to me is the best prep you can have. It really is. A good piece of land that you can work, you can grow, you can hunt, you can sustain yourself, okay? All right, guys, so that's an EMP kind of condensed. And the main thing to prepare for this, instead of, just worrying about it, let's prepare. Learn survival skills. Everything I just kind of talked about, that would be, to me, your priority. You're going to have to know how to survive, and you're going to have to know hunting, foraging, cooking, things like that. You're going to have to know with this. There's not necessarily something you can just go buy besides food, water, and light sources that to prepare for this. You need to learn how to survive, okay? So learn your survival skills, get beefed up on that, something like that. And I mean, really, you're good to go, okay? All right, guys, we'll see you next time on Harmon Homestead.